So today's standard is evaluating expressions, and it's honestly not much more than order of operations, just one extra step. Your objective will be, I can evaluate a given expression. Okay, just a quick review. No need to write this down because you already have them in your vocab sheet, but evaluate means to calculate the value of. An expression includes one or more terms with at least one operation, no equal sign. Okay, so for example, that could be 2x plus 5. We could have 3 times a. These are examples of expressions. Let's remind ourselves what PEMDAS means. So we have P, that stands for parentheses, or grouping symbols. Then we have exponents, multiplication and division, adding and subtracting. And then let's remind ourselves also that when you get down to only multiplication and division, you will go left to right. Same thing with adding and subtracting. If all that's left in the problem, you go left to right. Example 1, evaluate the expression if x equals 4, y equals 5, and z equals 3. So I'm going to replace or substitute the values that they give me in for my variables. So anytime I see an x, I will replace it with a 4. If I see a y, I will substitute in a 5, and z, I will substitute a 3. So I'm going to rewrite my problem. We have 3 plus parentheses, and now you see 2 times y, but instead I'm going to do 2 times my y, which is 5, plus z squared, and so my z is 3 squared, close my parentheses. So I've simply rewritten the problem, replacing my variables with the given values. So now I go to my PEMDAS and follow my order of operations. So parentheses is first. Well, there's lots in parentheses. So then I think about, well, inside of my parentheses, I have multiplication, I have addition, and I have an exponent. Well, going to my handy dandy PEMDAS, I know that exponents come first. So I'm going to do 3 plus, bring everything down, parentheses 2 times 5 plus, and we have 3 squared here, which is 9. Okay, and I'm going to continue on with my order of operations, continuing in my parentheses until I get down to one number. Then I can get rid of my parentheses. So I know that multiplication comes before addition, so I'm going to do 2 times 5 first. So I have 3 plus, parentheses 2 times 5 is 10, and then I'm going to bring down my 3, my plus 9. So inside my parentheses now, all I have is a 10 plus a 9 left. So I'm going to finish off with 3 plus. So now that I will have 19 and I'm down to one number, I can drop the parentheses and finish off by doing my final step of adding. So 3 plus 19 is 22. And I'm going to box my answer so that my teacher can clearly see where it is and she doesn't have to question it. I do want to point out that we did not use this x equals 4, and that's okay. If you don't see an x in the problem, you just don't use it. Example 2, evaluate the expression if a equals 2, b equals 6, and c equals 4. So I have a squared times the quantity of 3 times b plus 5, all divided by c. So again, I'm going to substitute in my given values for my variables. So instead of a squared, I will have 2 squared, open up my parentheses, instead of 3 times b, I will now have 3 times 6 plus 5, close my parentheses, all divided by c, which is 4. So I'm going to focus on my order of operations now, and I know that parentheses comes first. So inside the parentheses, I have multiplication and addition, and so I know that multiplication comes before addition, so I'm going to do that first. So I have 3 times 6. So I'm going to bring everything else down. So we have 2 squared. Open up my parentheses. 3 times 6 is 18. Bring down my plus 5. Close my parentheses. All divided by 4. Continuing till I get the parentheses down to one number. I'm going to do my addition now. So I have 18 plus 5 in parentheses. So I will now have 2 squared times 23 divided by 4. So notice I used my dot instead of my parentheses because you can use that for multiplication now that we're down to one number. So I've done my parentheses, and now I have to move on to my E, which stands for exponents. So I'm going to bring this up here. Because exponents come first, you must do it before we multiply by this 23. So 2 squared is 4 times our 23, all divided by 4. And so I'm going to pull out my calculator and do 4 times 23. And I get 92. And that is over 4, or in other words, divided by 4. So that makes my final answer 23. I'm going to box my answer, and that's it. Example 3. Evaluate the expression if m equals 3, p equals 2, and q equals 6. So we have m plus the square root of m plus q minus p. So I want you to notice we don't have any parentheses, but that p stands for any sort of grouping symbol. So you could have absolute value symbols, you could have a square root symbol like you see here, and so you will always do that first, just as if it's parentheses. So let's replace our values. So we have, instead of m, we are going to substitute in 3 plus the square root of m plus q, so that would be 3 plus 6. And then we have minus p, which is minus 2. Notice the minus 2 is not inside the square root symbol. So again, we're going to start with the square root since that's our grouping symbol. So underneath the square root symbol is the 3 plus 6. So we are going to do 3, we're going to bring down our 3 plus, instead of 3 square root of 3 plus 6, we will now have the square root of 9 and then minus 2. And so now we're going to take the square root of 9 because we need one value, so we can't do anything else until we have that down to one value. So we have 3 plus, so the square root of 9 is 3 minus 2. Okay, so at this point I only have addition and subtraction left. So I want you to remember when we're down to addition and subtraction, we go left to right. So we will do 3 plus 3 first, which is 6. Bring down our minus 2. So our final answer will be 4. All right, here's one problem for you to try. So evaluate the expression if x equals 3, y equals 1, and z equals 5.